Welcome back to the intermediate series. Today we'll be doing the blue block. This is called Girl's Favorite. I always wonder, how do they come up with these names for blocks? I don't know, but that's what this one's called. And we'll be doing some 3, 2, and 5/8 inch measurements, 7/8 inch measurements. You'll definitely be using your simple 7/8 inch ruler if you have it. And again, if you haven't already bought that ruler set, you're probably now realizing having the 7/8 inch ruler may be really nice. Of course, we have the rulers available as a set. You get a fourth ruler for free, or you can buy them individually if you already have some of the rulers. First one we'll be working on is the 4 1/4 inch cut twice on the diagonal. You've seen me use the spinning mat. This is already cut to 4 1/4, and this is where I really just love to use that spinning mat. Again, I'm not lining up with anything in particular. I'm just going to go ahead, make that cut, spin, so I don't have to move my fabric. I'm not cutting toward myself. And now I have my 2 cuts done, which give me 4 triangles. And I'll be doing the same thing with this fabric here. The dark blue is cut exactly the same. We have a 3 7/8 inch cut, so I'm going to be using that 7/8 inch ruler again. That's my new favorite ruler. I just love it. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and, actually that edge is nice and cleaned up, so there's no point in trimming some more away. 3 7/8. I don't have to work hard to find that measurement. In fact, it's almost helpful if I'm off the line, and that way I'm only looking at the lines on my ruler. I love how the lines on my ruler are much thinner than the lines on a rotary mat. When you have the lines on the rotary mat, it's quite thick, and you have to decide, where am I lining up on that? The lines on the Creative Grid ruler are far thinner, so it's very easy to line up. There's not a doubt of where to go. 3 7/8. I'll go ahead and turn that. I'm going to clean up that edge to start. And now I'm going to actually move off of that line on my mat, so I'm only focused on the line on my ruler. 3 7/8. And here we go. We're going to put that aside for now, and we'll be using that along with a white 3 7/8 inch to make these half square triangles. So I'm just going to put that aside for now. And then we have a 2 5/8. If you've never cut a 5/8 inch measurement, don't worry. There's nothing to it. Get to know your rulers. What I think about with a 2 5/8, 2 4/8 is 2 1/2, right? 4/8 is reduced to a half. So you will go to the 2 1/2 and just move over 1 tick. So and I only need one of them, actually I need 4 of those. Let me just cut a piece of that off for now, just so I'm working with less fabric. It's easier for you to see that. Don't want the 7/8 inch. Let's go with our 6 1/2 by 12 1/2 inch ruler on this one. We've already cut the 2 5/8 this direction, but let me show you about this ruler. So there's my 2 1/2 right there. 1 tick, 1 line over is the 5/8. So we will simply line up. There's my 2 1/2 right there. I'm going to scoot over till I'm lined up with that. Oop. Let's go back to that 2 1/2. That's where I always begin. Okay, am I at 2 1/2? Do I agree I'm at 2 1/2? Yes, I do. Then I'm going to scoot over till I'm now lined up with the next line over, and I'll go ahead and make that cut. And you would do that 4 times for this portion of your block. Of course, once we have everything cut, we'll begin to lay our block out. Now, the one thing I want to definitely go over with you is those pinwheels, or the half square triangles. They're actually not pinwheels, they're half square triangles that we often use to make pinwheels. But in this case, we won't be using a pinwheel. We'll be turning them in another orientation. So I'm going to be introducing to you the Fawns & Porter. I found this product a couple years ago. It's the 1/4 inch seam markers. They're not a necessity, they're a nicety. I would rather sew on a line than try to accurately sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance based on a drawn line. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Normally, when you're getting ready to make half square triangles, you would get your ruler, and on the lighter side, by the way, this is a 2-pack. One is shorter and one's longer. I love that. Sometimes I don't want a big long ruler, but sometimes I need a big long ruler. If you were not using this tool to make these half square triangles, you would, we did this before in the beginner series, get your ruler, get your friction pen, and you would draw corner to corner, and you would now take this to the sewing machine and you would sew a 1/4 inch away from that line here, pivot, sew a 1/4 of an inch away from that line, and then cut on the line and have two half square triangles. The thing I love about the Fons and Porter tool, and this works, but this works absolutely. I did that up till 2 years ago. Now with the Fons and Porter tool, what I love about this is instead of drawing the line, sewing a 1/4 of an inch, which I'm never dead on, I kind of come and go on that line. I get to place this corner to corner, and they have line up lines, as you can see, and I simply draw, and then I sew on those lines, which is lovely. I would rather sew on a drawn line than have to really concentrate on keeping that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once you have that already sewn, you will go ahead, in fact, let me clean up a little bit here. You'll go ahead and simply cut corner to corner, just like you would have before if you'd done it the kind of the old-fashioned way, or the non-ruler way without the Fons and Porter marking tool. If those lines bug you, just iron them away. And that's what I love about the friction pen. If you've watched any of my videos, this is like my favorite thing I have several of these, because you know what happens? Because they're a regular pen, they disappear. My kids borrow them, I throw them in my purse, and then when I go to sew, it's not with me. So when you buy the friction pen, it's actually a 2-pack. You can keep one in your purse and one in your sewing room, or both in your sewing room. Once you have this, go ahead and set your seam, and let's press toward our dark. And we're going to do both of those. We're going to need those. We're going to actually be laying that out on our flannel design board. We're going to use our Kai scissors to trim off those little dog ears. There's no reason to add bulk to our block. That's why I like to cut these things away. It's not critical that they be cut away, but why add bulk to your block unnecessarily? There's just no reason to. All right, let's get our flannel design board out. We laid out most of it except for these here. Love my flannel design board. Once you get the download and cut all of your pieces as necessary, and you lay out your block, it's going to look like this. I think I have one of my corners here. Yep, that one goes here. So this was the other two. Remember how I called it a pinwheel? I want to show you something. Let's see here. How would that work? If we decided we wanted to turn that into a pinwheel, which we could, if you really love pinwheels, this is one of the coolest parts to me about quilting, is the math in quilting. See, let's go this way and this way. You could make that block look like that if you wanted to. And that was my initial instinct, but that's not actually how the block goes. But if you like that pinwheel center, sew your block like that instead. Ours is just turned like this. Isn't that cool how you can just play with the fabric and you get a different look? Now that this is put together, this is very straightforward. Let's talk about this though. Again, we're going to give a lot more press to pressing, because it would be very easy for all of this to get very bulky if we're not really considering the direction in which we press. Now let's clean up just a little bit, because we'll definitely be talking about pressing. Let's make sure the iron's nice and hot. And consequently, I use my iron all the way full. I think it's on the linen setting. So I want to get as good of a press as possible. I definitely use sizing in these blocks and all of my fabrics. I want to talk about this area here. Let's start with, in fact, we have that section separately so you can see it in even more detail. I'm working on this part of this right now. So let me just show you the back of that. That's helpful. These two pieces were simply right sides together, sew 1/4 inch, and we press to the dark. Here, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam, press to the dark. Do you see how that's going to now make those seams nest? As I bring those right sides together, that just wants to just lock in beautifully. I love that, how that interlocking seam. In fact, let's go sew this one. I want to sew this one together. Make sure I got that orientation right. I've done that before where I get going too fast, and I definitely sewed something incorrectly. Told you that many times. I always fess up. I've made lots of mistakes in quilting, but thankfully I have a great seam ripper. I'm going to press this direction. Use my Kai scissors. Let's trim off that everywhere we can. That right there, let's trim that off too. So far our block is like this. Let's take a peek back here. So now for this portion, so let's actually put this back in place. Because sometimes when it's back here, it's not clear what to do next, but as you can see, you need to add this to here in order to add this to here. So we'll go right sides together, just like before, and let's take a peek. You'll be pressing toward the white this time. Those instructions will also be in your download. Let's trim that off. Great. So now we're at this stage. Okay, let me press that better. Now we're here. Just like before, right sides together. We'll be pressing toward the lighter blue. That way that seam is going this direction. This seam is going this direction. Right sides together. Interlocking seams. And I should have pinned, and I didn't. But let's see if I get lucky. Sometimes I get lucky, and sometimes I'm reaching for the seam ripper. Might have gotten lucky this time. Let's press away. I did get lucky this time. But that was definitely would have been a good one to go ahead and pin, just to be on the safe side. And that goes into position. All right, so you'll make 4 of those. We've already done our pinwheels, and this is not new to you. You would simply go right sides together here, sew your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and press open. And we've done that ahead of time. Go ahead and put that back on my final design board so I make sure I did get everything properly. And you know what? I'm going to move these upper. I want to show you something. When you press this open, see that 1/4 inch seam allowance? That little point right there is your 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I just wanted to point that out, which is really neat when you get ready to sew this whole thing together. It's just another visual target. When you sew right over that point, you know you're at the 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you know your block's going to come out looking just beautiful. So just like you would suspect with any block, you'll be sewing the top row together, the middle row together, and the bottom row together. And with the pressing, with the top and bottom rows, we went ahead and pressed out here because, as you can imagine, there's bulk in these corners. We wanted to press away from that and distribute some of the bulk to the outside, and for that reason the top and bottom rows are that way. And because there's equal bulk here, we went ahead and pressed those seams open, and then when we join the rows again, we press seams open. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make girl's favorite block, and we'll see you next time.